Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about our cross-sectional study on nicotine pouches. In terms of the study design, our primary objectives were to quantitatively assess differences in primary study endpoints between subjects who were current solus velo users and subjects who were current solus conventional cigarette smokers. The primary endpoints involved one biomarker of exposure, NNAL, which is a biomarker for NNK exposure, and 6 biomarkers of potential harm looking at nitric oxide, 8-EpiPGF2 alpha, which is an oxidative stress marker, carbon monoxide in hemoglobin, white blood cell count, SICAM and HDL cholesterol. In terms of the secondary objectives, we were aiming to look at the secondary endpoints between velo users and conventional cigarette smokers, but also assessing differences between the solus velo users, former smokers and subjects who never smoked. And for these endpoints we had one biomarker of potential harm, which was a thromboxane marker, and 7 biomarkers of exposure, looking at nicotine, biomarker for 1,3-butadiene, crotonaldehyde, acrolein, the tobacco-specific nitrosamine NNN, BAP and benzene. The study was conducted in 2 sites, one in Sweden and one in Denmark, and we had 4 study groups. So solus velo users who had been using the products for at least 6 months, smokers who smoked 10 or more cigarettes per day for at least 1 year prior to screening, former smokers who were self-reported ex-smokers that stopped smoking for at least 6 months, and never smokers who had reported that they'd never smoked more than 100 cigarettes in their lifetime. In total, there was 195 participants in the study, and as this was a cross-sectional study where it was a one-off visit to the clinic, we used a compliance biomarker called cyanoethylvaline, which could distinguish between people who are smoking and not smoking. In terms of the study demographics, for the velo group we had 97 subjects, for the smoker group we had 30, former smokers 29 and never smokers 39. We had a reasonably even split between male and female and a similar age group across the whole study. And as you can see, we also had the split between the different nationalities of Danish and Swedish. So moving on to the results for this study, I'd like to start off with the biomarkers of exposure. Starting firstly with the biomarker NNAL in urine, which is specific for the tobacco-specific nitrosamine NNK. And as you can see from the results here, smokers' levels were 10 times higher than those in the velo user group, and this was a significant result. In addition, for the biomarkers for crotonaldehyde, acrolein and 1,3-butadiene, we saw significant reductions between the velo users and smokers, and in fact the velo users showed very similar results to the former and never smokers. On to the biomarkers for benzoylpyrene and benzene, which are both carcinogens, and benzene is also associated with cardiovascular disease. We see significant reductions in the velo group compared to the smokers, and the velo group also showed comparable results to the former and never smokers. Finally, moving on to the biomarkers for NNN, which is a tobacco-specific nitrosamine. As you can see, smokers had significantly higher levels compared to the velo group, and this group also had similar levels to the former and never smokers. For total nicotine equivalence, which is a biomarker for nicotine, you can see that the nicotine levels were significantly higher in the velo group compared to the smokers, and this was skewed by the Swedish participants in the study compared to the Danish participants who had similar levels to the smokers. And we believe this is down to the traditional use of snus and pouch products in the Swedish population. So to summarise the biomarkers of exposure in this study, we saw significant reductions in all of the biomarkers of exposure in the velo group compared to smokers, except for nicotine, where we saw significantly higher levels. So then moving on to the biomarkers of potential harm. The biomarkers of potential harm used in this study are early biomarkers associated with various smoking-related diseases, including respiratory health, cardiovascular disease, COPD, and cancer. So moving on to the biomarker for nitric oxide, we see a significant reduction in the levels in smokers compared to velo users. In addition, we also looked at the oxidative stress biomarker, APPGF2 alpha, which although showed lower levels compared to smokers, this was not significant. Moving on to the biomarkers for carboxyhemoglobin and white blood cell count, we also see significant reductions in the velo group compared with the smoking group. The biomarker for HDL cholesterol, we saw no difference between the velo and smoker group. In fact, no difference between the former smokers and never smokers either. In addition, for SICAM, we did not see a significant difference between the velo and smokers group, although the velo group did show a favourable decrease in the levels of this biomarker. And finally, for thromboxane, which is a biomarker for cardiovascular disease, we saw a significant reduction in the velo group compared to smokers. And in fact, the velo group was similar to the former smokers and never smoker groups. So in summary, for the biomarkers of potential harm, we've seen 4 of the 7 biomarkers of potential harm show favourable, statistically significant differences compared to those of continued smoking. Overall, these levels in the velo users were generally similar to those in the former and never smoker groups as well. So in conclusion, this is the first study conducted on velo users on 16 biomarkers of potential harm and exposure, many of which revealed large and significant differences between velo users and smokers. In terms of the biomarkers of exposure, with the exception of the nicotine biomarker, all of the exposure biomarkers assessed were significantly lower for velo compared to the smoking group. And in the biomarkers of potential harm, 4 of the 7 biomarkers showed significant differences between velo and smoking. Finally, this cross-sectional design enabled us to gain insight into the use behaviour for this relatively new product and gives data that is reflective of real-world uses. We believe this adds to the growing weight of evidence of oral nicotine pouches as a reduced risk alternative compared to smoking. Anyway, thank you for your time, and I'd be delighted to answer any questions.